Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for EVE Echoes. In today's video we're going to be going back to my Silent Rose character and taking a look at another one of my favourite Battlecruisers. Now, you folks might be a little bit confused if you know much about me, and thinking, hang on Benzie, that's an Amarrian Harbinger. You hate Amarr ships. Amarr and Minmatar don't get along. You don't like the look of many Amarr ships. Why on earth are you flying one of these? Well, spoiler alert, I actually really like the Harbinger. I think this is a fantastic ship that's got a lot of power and potential to it. It's basically the Amarrian equivalent of the Hurricane, and whilst it doesn't obviously use cannons, it uses lasers, those are actually really good in EVE Echoes, and even though I'm based out in Angel space, where I'm obviously taking a lot of explosive damage from the rats out here, I actually use the Harbinger line of ships an awful lot. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Harbinger, about how I use this, how I fit it, and why I really like this ship. Now, if you are enjoying this video, please let me know by hitting like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding that notification bell to never miss a video, and of course, come find me on Patreon or Redbubble if you want to go the extra mile to help support this channel and keep me doing what I'm doing. As a brief update as well, just to let you guys know, I have been contacted recently by BlueStacks about their affiliate program. I'm looking into this as a possibility, so if you do use BlueStacks, stay tuned as for other ways to help me out with my channel, and indeed, if you don't use BlueStacks and have been considering it, well, we'll talk about that in a future video as well. Anyway, with all of that said and done then, let's jump right into talking about the Amarr Harbinger. The Harbinger is kind of the Amarr Empire equivalent of the Minmatar Republic Hurricane, and you folks know how much I absolutely adore the Hurricane, so it shouldn't really be all that much of a surprise that I quite like the Harbinger too. Let's jump into the Amarr Empire ship tree, specifically the Battlecruiser line, and have a look at this. Now, the first time that we encounter the Harbinger is at tech level 7 with the Harbinger prototype, just like we have the Hurricane prototype at tech level 7 of the Minmatar ship tree. So let's add this one to comparisons, and then at tech level 8 we get the mainline Harbinger. Let's have a look at these two side by side. Now, this video is mainly going to focus on the mainline Harbinger, the tech level 8 variant. That said, if you come here looking for information about the Harbinger prototype, I will have a QR code on screen now that you can load into the Suite app. Make sure that you check out my video on how that works, so you can have a look at how you could fit the Harbinger prototype. It is still an excellent ship, and assuming that you are at advanced battlecruiser skills, advanced medium laser skills, 5 across the board there, this will easily see you through tech level 7, tech level 8, and early tech level 9 content. You can also go down to things like tech level 6 Inquisitor and Scout anomalies with the Harbinger prototype as well, so it is a very versatile ship that does have some real punch behind it. Looking at the two side by side, you can see that the Harbinger prototype only has 6 high slots compared to the mainline Harbinger having 7, but otherwise the fitting profiles are the same. They both have the same roll bonus, and when it comes down to the advanced medium laser upgrade, you'll notice that the Harbinger prototype technically gets more. It's a 9% medium laser damage per level rather than 6%. That's because you've got fewer high slots. It still works out better to upgrade to the Harbinger directly. As we go further down, you'll see the prototype does have lower defense, it's a slightly slower ship with a lower flight velocity, its power grid is a little bit lower, its capacity is a little bit lower. Basically, the Harbinger prototype is exactly as its name suggests. It's the Harbinger, but not as good. So we are going to be focusing, as I said, on the mainline Harbinger. So let's open this one up, go into Learn More, and take a look at this ship. Now, the hull is kind of unusual. This isn't going to feature in any of my top 5 best looking ships in New Eden videos. It didn't when I made that exact video, but I do quite like it. I like the symmetry involved in it. It's not too ostentatious compared to some of the other Amarr ships, and it does get some pretty interesting skins and that for it as well. I'm looking to get some good nanocores for this one, possibly the Clear Sky. Really wish I'd gotten the Dark Halo because that's a really cool looking one. There's just a lot of ways that you can make this ship look a little bit better than the base hull. Ultimately, the Harbinger isn't a bad looking ship in my opinion, it's just not the best. Let's move into the attributes and fittings though, because this is where the ship really starts to shine. First of all, that fitting profile. 1 drone tube launching small or medium drones, don't stress it too much. 7 high slots for medium lasers, 3 mid slots which are going to give us a good amount of E-war and things like capacitor warfare and things like that. 5 low slots, and then 3 each of the power grid and combat rigs, so combat and engineering rigs, sorry. Standard for a ship of this size. We have a very nice power grid output here, 1,209 megawatts. That allows us to actually fit a lot of modules comfortably. We can oversize a couple of bits and pieces too if we want, which we'll talk about later. Cargo hold is standard to actually slightly lower. I think the Hurricane sits at 800 cubic meters, so it's slightly smaller, but it's big enough to get the job done. The defences are pretty solid here on the Harbinger, 30,740 to begin with, the vast majority of which is in its armour tank, 9,746. This is by far an armour tank ship. You don't really want to try and shield tank this. You can try, it does kind of have the capacitor to pull it off, but I just really don't recommend it because it doesn't have the backing to it. You're trying to shield tank a ship that only has 6,616 EHP on the shields there. It doesn't work particularly well. Those are very light shields. Those are literally cruiser or even there are destroyers out there with bigger shields than the Harbinger. Capacitor bank, as I said, is pretty good, 4,727 gigajoules, a very nice capacitor recharge rate there of 21.64. This is typical of Amarr ships though. They have absolutely ballistic capacitor banks. Mainly because lasers use, obviously, a lot of capacitor per shot. We've talked about this in other videos. I'd like to see that rebalanced so that the Amarr ships have less capacitor, but ultimately the lasers use less as well. It's a complex thing that's outside the scope of this video, but for now, just understand that Amarr ships have large capacitors because they're firing lasers which use a lot of capacitor. As we go further down, max log targets of 6 is again typical for a ship of this tonnage and tech level. Signature radius is quite large, 222.7. Scan resolution of 226 means it does lock on fairly quick for a battlecruiser. It's basically above average to above average in almost all of its stats. Even its flight velocity, despite being an Amarr ship, is actually pretty good with a decent mass and inertia modifier that gives a fairly competent agility rating there as well. This isn't the most nimble battlecruiser out there, but it is actually surprisingly fast and agile. Then we have its trait description. Now, being one of the ship-of-the-line battlecruisers like the Hurricane, like the Brutix, and like the Ferox, I couldn't think of the name there, ultimately it has a roll bonus here of a 25% increase to the optimal range and accuracy fall-off of its designated weapon system. Here with the Harbinger, that is medium laser optimal range and medium laser accuracy fall-off, which works really well for both beams and pulses. Finally, it then can fit command bursts. Obviously, it's a battlecruiser. We could put on things like armoured command bursts here if you're flying in a fleet. That can be worth it. Ultimately, the only reason I would ever put a command burst on something like a standard Harbinger is if no one else in the fleet has access to, a command ship. If you have a command ship around you, then you're not really going to bother fitting command bursts. They're not really worth it for solo play, as far as the Harbinger itself goes, unless you are really maxed out in those skills. But again, that's another topic for another video. I am not maxed out in command burst skills because they are ridiculously expensive, and we have people who already do that in fleets. Looking at its mainline trait descriptions then, we get bonuses from Advanced Medium Laser Upgrade, notably Upgrade, so if you've been training into like laser cruisers like the Omen, those will have gotten bonuses from Medium Laser Operation. You are now needing to get Upgrade all the way to Advanced 5 as well to get the full bonus out of this, which is going to be a 6% increase to medium laser damage, 30% at full training, and a 10% reduction to medium laser capacitor need, 50% reduction at full thing there, which again, with the size of the capacitor on the Harbinger, plus the sort of recharge rate and that of it, plus this reduction to capacitor need, means that your lasers don't actually chew your battery as much as you might think they would. Finally then, Battlecruiser Command bonus gives us a 5% reduction to inertia modifier, which makes this just that little bit more agile. As I said, ultimately the Harbinger is average to above average in almost all of its stats. Lasers are just a really solid weapon system in general. They've got good optimal. The fall-off's a little bit short and sharp, so you kind of need to be as close to optimal as possible, but considering how sort of, generous the optimal range on lasers is to begin with, that shouldn't really be too much of a problem, especially since the Harbinger has really good inertia modifier and a pretty solid flight velocity to allow it to hold on to that optimal range. It gets massive damage there. That 6%, 30% additional damage on top of 7 high slots is giving you basically almost a third extra damage. So rather than 7 high slots, you're looking at basically the equivalent of having 9 and a bit. It is a hard-hitting ship that is astonishingly versatile, so let's look at fitting it. By now, you folks should be fairly familiar with the concept that I like brawling in EVE. I like to get up close and personal so that I can loot as I go, and I like having the enemy ship's explosions be right on top of my hull. It's my preferred playstyle. It's a lot of fun to get up close and personal, punch them right in the face, and just deal your damage that way, and the Harbinger does do really well at this. Now, strap in, because this fitting does have a lot of variables to it. This is based on the skills that I have currently available to me, and as we go through the fitting, I will be talking about some of the changes that you can make to sort of help this fit if you are at a lower level when it comes to training these skills. Again, use the Sweet Fitting app with the QR code that was on screen earlier at the start of this fitting section. That will allow you to go through and check that fit. You can modify it based on your own skills and check that everything fits with the power grid and how you are in terms of capacitor. Now, because it is a brawling fit, our high slots here are C-type medium pulse lasers, going for pulse for that short range, high firepower there. Although I say short range, we have an optimal range of 19 kilometers on these. That is just insane. We can orbit at 20 Ks and be doing pretty much 100% damage. Heck, if you're orbiting at 19 Ks, you're doing 100% damage with this thing. This is why I love lasers. That optimal range is just insanely good, and that's the short range variant. That's not even beam lasers, which, yeah, anyway. Short-range medium pulse lasers here, high DPS 144, most of which is in electromagnetic, and a little bit in thermal on the side there. This does mean you're going to be better at shields than you are against armor, but your damage and application are high enough that you're still going to do good damage to armor, just not as much as you would be against the shields. Worth bearing in mind if you're going up against particular types of rats. I like using this against, for example, angel rats or Caldari rats, because you just cut through their shields nice and quickly. As we go into the mid-slots, this is where the fun really starts. We have an up-here large energy Nosferatu. Ultimately, this is a large energy Nosferatu, and whether or not you can cram this in is going to depend on your engineering skills. Now, I have, first of all, Battlecruiser engineering up to 554. I do need to take it to 555 for that additional bonus to the power grid reduction on high slots. You can also do that with cruiser engineering. If you've been flying cruisers and you've got high cruiser engineering skills, cruiser engineering expert level does have reduction to medium weapon power grids, which means those lasers are going to use less power grid, which frees up more space for other things, like a large energy Nosferatu. These things are power grid hungry. I mean, check that out. You're looking at 715 megawatts of power grid just on this one module there. But it does mean that we can be sapping energy from enemy ships at a whopping range there of 21.78 kilometers, which means our optimal range of the lasers, 19 kilometers, and the optimal range of the Nosferatu here do match up really quite nicely, and it means we can be orbiting with that working at full range, whereas if you go down to a medium Nosferatu, you're not really going to have that same sort of range match. You have to come into your optimal range a bit more, which then starts negatively affecting your tracking because you're orbiting in a tighter circle. Yeah, basically the idea is here that that large energy Nosferatu means we get a better transference, we are keeping our battery going, our capacitor going a bit longer, and it matches up with that range. This is a key part of the build for me. Ultimately, if you find that you aren't able to fit this, it may be worth having a look at upping your engineering skills and considering looking at an auxiliary power grid router into your rig slots. We'll talk more about the rigs later. There is space to fit a power grid router in there if you really wanted to. Then I have two interruptive stasis webifiers. I would go for predators here, I just didn't have them lying around. Ultimately, the reason for this is just when a ship gets within 15 kilometers, it can start orbiting a bit too fast for you to cope with, so being able to web it just allows those pulses to hit a little bit better. That said, if you're finding that enemy ships want to orbit outside of web range, because of the tracking on medium pulses and their optimal range, you should actually still be able to hit them, especially if you know how to slingshot. For the drone, I've just gone for a Mark 9 Infiltrator. There's no point really spending a lot of ISK on something here that does little to no damage overall. I mean, heck, if you check the DPS, that's doing 21.97 DPS out of a total of 1,030. We don't care about the drone. It's there, and it works again against anything that does come within drone range, little frigates and destroyers and stuff like that might be a little bit harder to hit. The drone can just apply some extra damage. For the low slots, I've gone for my typical twin armor rep setup here. When I'm armor tanking, I like twin armor reps. You'll find that this actually allows you to go pretty much AFK in regards to your tanking against most things. Even against Tech 10 Angel anomalies, this is sufficient to hold tank quite comfortably. 2 of those running, you're getting a total now 603 armor rep per one of these on a cycle time of 6.68 seconds. So basically, every 3.5 seconds you're getting 608, every 6.6 seconds you're getting a total of 1,206. That's pretty good armor repping there. Very good heal per second, helps keep you alive in PvE. Then I've gone for 2 core C-type adaptive armor hardeners. These again are just there to mean that I take less damage and that the armor reps can do their thing. Now, if you're not going up against Angel anomalies, if for example you're going up against Blood Raider or Sancha that are doing primarily electromagnetic and thermal damage, you can swap this one out. Rather than having 2 adaptive armor hardeners, just go for 1. The second one you can then either go for a battery if you want to be a little bit more cap stable. I'm cap stable with this build, but if your skills are a little bit lower and you're not cap stable, a battery might be enough to do that for you, or you could go for something like a heatsink for additional DPS as well. When I'm not going against Angels, I go for a heatsink personally because it just increases your clear time. Faster clear time means more ISK per hour. Talking about being faster, final slot is a Republic Fleet medium afterburner. Again, you might find that you can go a little bit higher or lower on this. I do have a little bit of power grid left over, but I didn't have a higher module here that I could really cram into that. And a Republic Fleet is more than enough. Plus, it's just nice for me to have something on an Amarr ship saying, this is being flown by a Minmatar pilot. So the Republic Fleet really does it for me there, and there aren't really any other modules I can do there other than the stasis webifiers, just to allow me to do that. But obviously, Republic Fleet medium afterburner, flight velocity adjustment 180%, no real need for a micro warp drive if you're going PvE, which is what this build is for. If you go PvP, then yeah, micro warp drive can be useful, at which point you're going to want to swap that Nosferatu for something like a neutralizer instead, but yeah. Once we get into the rig slots here, again, we have some differences of what we can do. So I've started on the left-hand side with my combat rigs of a collision accelerator and 2 burst aerators, all at meta level 3, and the rank 3 types. This is your standard DPS setup. Now, yeah, you'll notice we're only just over 1,000 DPS with this. That's because my nano core, which we'll talk about more later, I've gone for the Nosferatu bonus, not for the damage one. Oh no, I did go for damage, sorry. I am lying through my teeth, but it is a standard blue core, 14.4% there on the blue core, so it's not all that much. This, again, means you can swap out that core C-type adaptive armor hardener for a heatsink. If you find then you're getting a little bit squishy, swap the second burst aerator out for something like a nanobot accelerator to give you a bit more heal per cycle of your armor repairers. That's kind of where you can play around with things. Ultimately, lasers are a bit unusual in that obviously, yes, you're increasing your DPS with the burst aerator, but you are also increasing your capacitor usage, and that might actually push you into capacitor instability depending on your skills. And if it does, well, drop a burst aerator there, pop in the nanobot accelerator, and then on your low slots, swap out that second hardener for a heatsink there, and that'll push your DPS up that little bit higher. Now, going back to the nanocore and actually taking a look at that briefly, I've gone for laser damage here, Harbinger Blood Raider Veteran Core, just because I like the look of it, I like the colour scheme we've got going here. Laser damage seems a good choice to go for. Obviously, the Blood Raider Veteran Cores do also have things like Nosferatu transference. As you can see, we are capacitor stable, and we are comfortably capacitor stable, so I don't really worry about like the Nosferatu transference. For the engineering rigs, I've gone for a semiconductor memory cell and a capacitor control circuit with a targeting system subcontroller. Now, the capacitor control circuit and the semiconductor memory cell, of course, help with capacitor stability, and the targeting system there takes my scan resolution up to 359mm, meaning we lock on just that little bit faster. Again, faster lock on means you can start applying damage faster, which means a faster time to clear. more ISK per hour. It also means that when you have a new wave spawn, you can lock onto the frigates and fast-moving destroyers that little bit sooner as well and start blapping them whilst they're still moving towards you. And whilst they're moving towards you, they have no transversal velocity, no angular velocity at all, so your shots hit considerably easier and do higher damage. Ultimately, this gives us overall a very nice DPS here. We're over the 1000 DPS mark. And you might be comparing this to the Hurricane and going, hang on, but your Hurricane was over 1200. Well, yes. But the Hurricane kind of lies to you, because you're going to always be in the fall-off range, which means you're probably only going to be doing 70 to 80% of your paper DPS being what's shown here on the screen. Whereas with lasers, you're pretty much going to be doing that full 1030, or 1008 with the turrets at least, at all times. That is going to be applied near perfectly. Laser precision, if you want to go down that one. Lasers apply their damage really, really well. So if we're orbiting at 19 kilometers, I'm going to be doing a full 100% damage pretty much against anything that's coming towards me, whereas if I'm using cannons or something, I'm going to be sitting in fall-off range, which means the paper DPS looks higher, but the effective DPS is actually lower. Defenses, again, very solid, 44,348 cold effective hit points there. Stable capacitor, nice, comfortable stable capacitor there. Targeting, again, we lock on nice and quickly. Decent-ish signature radius for a ship of this size. Navigation, though, 262.7 meters per second as standard. That's before we activate the afterburner. Again, this isn't going to be winning any races anytime soon, especially compared to something like a Hurricane, but it is fast enough that it allows you to sort of keep that orbit, keep that range, and just sort of control the distance in the fight that way. Well, enough of me talking about this. Let's actually showcase this in action, shall we? For this demonstration, I'm flying the Tech 8 Harbinger through an Angel 10 small anomaly. This is just in my home system. I'm ratting with this just to showcase how well it can do, and we're coming into the final wave here. You can see I'm pretty high on the capacitor. My armor is at full bore there, full all the way up at 100%. I'm just going to lock onto the new wave, start orbiting. We're going to pop on the Nosferatu onto the Maelstrom, because I'll be pretty much in optimal range the entire purpose of this fight. And then I'm going to start shooting at the small ships first. So starting with the Hounds and the things like the destroyers, all the frigates, we're going to take those out. And you see the lasers don't really have a problem dealing with these. I've got both armor repairers running. I just kind of put both on the off chance I would need it, and you can see they are more than comfortably holding my armor there at the 100% mark. I drop down to like 98%, and then the armor repairer finishes cycling, and bam, we're back up to 100%. We're not losing anything. As the Talwar 2 assault there came into range, I've hit it with the webs just to be sure. It's still within 12-13 kilometers. I'm shooting it with those lasers, and you can see it going down quite comfortably there. Off it goes. You know, the two Hounds have gone down quickly. There goes the Talwar 2. We're going to move on to the next one. This is outside of web range, and I am in an orbit with an afterburner on, but you see we still have no real issues hitting with those medium lasers. Now, normally I would have my medium lasers actually on a sort of countersync, so start with the 4 and then halfway through its cycle hit the 3, but as it's kind of gone auto from target to target, it has actually managed to sync them up. There we are, I've just manually reset that. The reason I do this is so that when a target swaps, I can immediately start moving with at least half of those. This is a better thing to do if you're going up against smaller ships and you think that a volley might be enough to kill them on its own. It's a good way to split your damage slightly, and just helps you apply it that little bit more accurately. It means if something would die to one laser beam, then you're not firing all 7 at it, and therefore wasting 6 of them. At most, I'm going to be wasting 3 shots in that kind of situation. Anyway, we now move on to the Gistum Tornado, and I'm going to start orbiting that and shooting through it. Now, the big question that I know is going to be on loads of people's minds as they're watching this is, why are you going to all this trouble? Like, you're doing a small anomaly, it takes you 20 minutes to do a small, compared to something like an Apocalypse Striker that can do it so much faster and can do the bigger ones as well. Why would you do this? And the simple answer is fun. This is a video game that we're playing after all, and I find this a lot more fun for me to challenge myself to actually do this. I have to be active. I'm watching this, I'm manually looting as we go, or was on previous waves. Here I'm a little bit far out from these. I can manually loot as I go, I'm changing my orbit, I get to turn on and off modules like I've turned off the Amarr rep and things like that. Didn't need to, it's not like I'm losing capacitor or anything, but by just having one Amarr rep going, it's a useful sort of skill to get into the habit of doing. It's a useful habit to get into, at least, turning those off. For me, having an anomaly that I'm more active in is much more fun than earning faster ISK. And I know that some people are going to be like, well, you know, the whole point of the game is getting ISK to get bigger ships. And I'd say, no, it's not. Like, I'm happy to wait a few days extra if it means that I get to actually have fun doing stuff. Yeah, okay, if I could earn more ISK per hour, I could get things faster. But when I have those things, what next? And it's not like there is a Tech 10 Harbinger or a Tech 10 Hurricane that I can actually be flying like this. I'd be stuck using a ship that I don't really enjoy as much. Like, yeah, I've got the Macariel on this character as well. This character literally has a Macariel parked in the station in this system, but I'm undocking the Harbinger and having fun with that instead, because it's more fun for me. And I know that's probably sounding crazy to some people, but that's just how I play. I like to use the ships that I like to play, and that's why I do these videos. Otherwise, I would do one video, and that's, oh, you've hit Tech 10, congratulations, respec into large lasers, go Apocalypse Striker, and that is all of your ratting needs sorted. Here's the fit you use, off you go. But I will never do that, because that's boring as heck. I want to show you guys how you can have fun in the ships that you enjoy flying. I enjoy flying the Hurricane, I enjoy flying the Harbinger, so I want to show you that it is actually possible to use this at tech level 10 and still actually, you know, complete these encounters. And if I go into, you know, high-sec or somewhere where I can do tech 7 encounters, this thing blitzes them. It absolutely rips through them. So if you want to do the whole high-sec island thing, drop yourself down to the tech level 7 or tech level 8 encounters and just farm them. Just farm them with that. You can go ridiculously quickly. I have a Harbinger parked in high-sec that I used to use this with. I used to do this with. I would set the Concord Pass to completing so many news encounters and destroying so many NPC ships. The bounties were fairly low, but I could just blitz the Concord Pass at a really quick rate. And to me, that's actually more fun than, you know, being optimal. I don't like sitting in an optimal ship, sitting at, you know, maximum range, sniping things off. I want to watch the ships explode on my hull. I want to imagine that I'm sitting on the hull of this ship or sitting in the cockpit or whatever, and bam, there goes the ship, big explosion. That's really cool to me. Anyway, so here we have it, proof that a Harbinger can do Tech 10 encounters. This is in Angel space as well. If you're up in Guristas space, this is even better, because you just rip through their shields and their weapons don't do all that much back. The fact that the Minmatar ships do primarily explosive damage does really hurt when you are armor tanking a ship like this. So you can change the fit around a bit and mix up some of the modules, maybe apply higher damage, swap out that, as I said, that second adaptive invulnerability, adaptive hardness, sorry, for a heatsink, and keep the 2 burst aerators. Just rip through things faster. For PvP as well, same kind of theory. This ship is very versatile. You can engage quickly, you can disengage if you need to, you deal very high damage in a short period of time, and it's not overly expensive either. I think Yatsuki built me this ship for somewhere around the 130 to 150 million. Fitting it didn't cost that much more either. It's not an overly expensive ship, which means if I lose it, oh well, I'll bring it back with insurance points or just get Yatsuki to make me another one. I just... yeah, there we go. Anyway, folks, I'm at that point in the video now where I am rambling. This encounter is about to end, and I'm about to go through and hoover up the loot, because it is useful, and it does earn you that little bit of extra risk. Nice, pretty explosion there. Look at that. Oh, it's so nice. I love watching explosions in EVE. That is why I play this game. To watch ships explode, whether they're enemy ships or my own ships, it doesn't matter. If something's exploding, I'm happy. Anyway, folks, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Maybe it's given you some inspiration. Let me know, do you fly the Harbinger yourself? Have you got a really cool fit that you use for it? Are you flying it in PvP? Show me some juicy kill mails. Remember, come join the Cat Skull Discord. 3 people every week are chosen to win a month of Combo Omega. 2 are people just in my Discord's public channels. One of them is someone who has commented on YouTube, so get commenting, get in with the chance of winning a month of Combo Omega. Otherwise, folks, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden. Look at that explosion.